Have you ever wondered why the more money you accumulate, the less alive you feel? Why each success feels quieter than the last, almost like applause echoing through an empty hall? Perhaps you've sensed it, silently, a subtle rot beneath the surface of luxury. The paradox is so profound it feels forbidden to question that everything you were told would fulfill you might be the very thing draining your soul. But don't rush for answers, not yet. Because what Nietzsche warned us about isn't written in motivational quotes or financial manifestos. It hides in the creases of desire, in the golden lie we tattooed into our culture, that wealth means worth. You are not poor because you lack money. You are empty because you were trained to believe that was all you needed. They told you to chase it, not with curiosity, but with hunger. To abandon your instincts, to silence your questions, to shape your life into a ladder with no top. But Nietzsche saw it for what it was, a slow, spiritual disintegration disguised as success. What if the very act of pursuing wealth erodes the will to power it promises to fulfill? What if money doesn't make you free? It makes you forget what freedom even feels like. Each coin you gather may not be a symbol of triumph, but a monument to everything you traded away. Time, instinct, rebellion. You didn't just buy things, you sold pieces of yourself. And still, the hunger remains. Why? Because the void you feel wasn't born from poverty, it was born from betrayal. The betrayal of your own becoming. Nietzsche didn't condemn wealth, he condemned submission. And in the modern world, wealth is no longer earned, it is worshipped. But what you worship shapes you, and when you kneel before the dollar you rise hollow. The tragedy is not that people suffer for money, it's that they forget who they were before money became their god. And yet, some part of you remembers, a flicker, a shadow, a tension that never fully leaves. You think it's stress. It's not. It's your soul refusing to be bought. What if poverty isn't the opposite of wealth, but its mirror? What if both the billionaire and the beggar suffer the same ailment, just in different dialects? One is imprisoned by lack, the other by excess, and between them, the forgotten ones, those who once sought truth but were detoured by glittering distractions. Nietzsche whispered to those few, "Do not measure your strength by what you acquire, but by what you can resist." So ask yourself, when was the last time you resisted money, not out of failure, but out of force, out of a power so grounded, it terrifies the market? That kind of strength doesn't sell because it cannot be bought. So before you click away, answer this. Why do you still feel so unsatisfied, even when you have enough? What is it that still gnaws at the corners? To have your mind when everything's quiet. What Nietzsche left behind was not an answer, but a fracture, a crack in the mirror of everything you've believed. And through that fracture, a question slips in, one that this video dares to confront, but only if you stay. Because this isn't about money, this is about the cage you built out of it. And what happens when the door, for the first time, swings open? It begins with a soundless question, one that doesn't echo through your mind but through your bones, a whisper in the silence between goals achieved and dreams abandoned. You felt it when you held the paycheck in your hand, and yet didn't feel anything at all. You expected triumph but received stillness, not the peaceful kind and the hollow one. That unsettling quiet after the applause fades, and you're left alone with the weight of everything you thought you wanted. What if money doesn't betray you? What if it merely reveals the betrayal you committed against yourself? You wanted control, you got it. But control without meaning is just elegant suffocation. And Nietzsche knew, the soul dies slowly when it's no longer allowed to want what it truly desires. We mistake the chase for the purpose. But purpose is not pursuit, it is fire. It does not live in accumulation, it lives in confrontation. Confrontation with the self we buried under responsibilities, debts, expectations. Every dollar earned was meant to bring freedom. Instead, it brought a different kind of prison, one we built ourselves, brick by gilded brick, each choice silently whispering, "This is what adults do." We became professionals in sacrifice, masters of compromise, and the more we gained, the less we questioned. Because doubt became dangerous. It threatened to unravel the only narrative we had left. But Nietzsche asked us not to obey that silence. He taught that to live fully, we must tear off the mask of satisfaction and look the lie in the eyes. Somewhere along the way, you stopped asking the questions that mattered, not because you found the answers, but because you were taught that asking them would cost you everything. So you traded your questions for comfort, your wildness for schedules, your truth for validation. And now you wake up in a life that looks exactly like success, but feels like exile. You're surrounded but not seen, respected but not remembered, loved but not known. And through it all, your shadow grows restless. That part of you Nietzsche insisted should never be tamed. You feel it pacing behind, your eyes in moments of hesitation, in choices you can't explain. It doesn't want your stability. It wants your rupture. It wants you to remember what it felt like to be wild, to not care if you fit, to ask questions that no one had the courage to answer. You weren't born to be efficient. You were born to be dangerous. But modern life rewards obedience dressed as ambition. You've been domesticated by metrics, your spirit filed away in spreadsheets, your instincts reduced to strategy. But there is something no salary can give you, the taste of your own power. The kind of power that comes not from having more, but from needing less. That comes not from applause, but from solitude. And Nietzsche's voice rises now, like an ancient tremor from the unconscious. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. But whose why are you living? Whose map are you following? And what if the real treasure was never the wealth, but the will you abandoned to get it? You feel it now, don't you? That unease crawling beneath your certainty. It's not fear, it's memory. A memory of who you were before the world told you what you should want. That memory has teeth, and it's hungry. Hungry for rebellion, for transcendence, for meaning beyond numbers. You won't silence it with luxury. You won't sedate it with distractions. It will claw its way out through dreams, through illnesses, through quiet acts of sabotage. Because the soul refuses to be silenced forever, and if Nietzsche was right, and he often was, then the path back to yourself is not upward, but downward. Into the darkness you avoided, into the truths you disguised as goals, into the questions you stopped asking, not to find answers, but to remember the real question: what did I give up in order to be successful? There is a moment, subtle, almost imperceptible, when your victories begin to feel like burdens, when each achievement arrives not with celebration, but with an unexpected grief. You pretend not to notice, you smile, you perform, you call it being grateful. But somewhere deep, something inside you begins to rot. The joy feels borrowed, the pride rehearsed, and beneath it all, a single question starts to echo with unbearable clarity. What have I become? Not what you've earned, not what you've built, but what has been silently dismantled within you while you played by the rules of a game you never designed. Nietzsche warned of this fracture, the abyss between who we are and what we present. And in that abyss, your spirit slowly suffocates, smiling. You were taught to quantify everything, your time, your value, your success, but you were never taught to feel it. No one explained that the currency of life isn't measured in bank accounts, but in blood, in what it costs you internally. To keep playing a role that no longer fits. You keep earning but losing yourself. You keep buying but feeling empty. Because money at its core is a mirror, and mirrors don't lie, they only reflect. And what it reflects back to you now is terrifying. A version of yourself you no longer recognize. One who traded curiosity for compliance, passion for predictability, fire for function. You thought you were climbing, but what if you've only been shrinking in more expensive clothes? Nietzsche did not call for poverty. He called for intensity, for authenticity so raw that it shatters the illusion of wealth as meaning. He demanded that we reclaim our hunger, not for consumption but for confrontation, with the masks we wear, the lies we tell ourselves, the comforts that are actually cages. Because what is comfort if it costs you your truth? What is success if it sterilizes your soul? We look up to those who have made it, but few dare to ask, made it where? into palaces built on exhaustion, into roles that require anesthesia to endure, into lives so crowded with things that there's no room left for the self. If this is wealth, Nietzsche would say, then poverty might be the last place the soul can still breathe. And maybe that's why you can't sleep. Not because you're stressed, but because a part of you, the real you, is refusing to go quietly. That voice you drown with noise, that ache you numb with purchases, that longing you label midlife crisis, but is really something ancient, clawing its way back to the surface. It doesn't want relief, it wants truth. And truth, as Nietzsche knew, is rarely comfortable. It burns, it breaks, it dismantles, but it also awakens. And now you stand at the threshold, not of bankruptcy, but of rebirth, not of failure, but of freedom. And if you step through, nothing you be. There is a version of you that remembers how to burn without being consumed. It hides in your sighs, in the strange peace you feel when everything goes wrong, in the thoughts you have when you think no one is watching. That version does not care how much you earn. It cares how deeply you feel. It does not fear the loss of status. It fears the loss of soul. And right now, that version is knocking, not gently, but relentlessly. Through restlessness, through fatigue, through the aching sense that something vital is missing and always has been. Nietzsche would not give you comfort for this pain. He would sharpen it, name it, reveal it for what it is, the call to step out of the system that built you and finally meet yourself. You were not born to impress, to please, to climb endlessly toward goals handed to you by dead men in suits. You were born to become. And becoming, Nietzsche reminds us, is never clean. It is a process of unmaking, of shedding layers so thick with others' expectations that you can no longer hear your own voice beneath them. You thought money would give you power, but what it gave you was insulation. From your instincts, from your fears, from your truth. You thought wealth would set you free, but now you realize it has only upgraded your prison. The walls are softer now, the food is better, but the locks are still in place. You've stopped screaming. But that doesn't mean you've stopped suffering. What if freedom isn't something you buy, but something you bleed for? What if the cost of real freedom is everything you've been told to protect? Your image, your reputation, your routines. Nietzsche said the one who climbs the highest must expect to be alone. But we avoid solitude like a sickness, filling our hours with noise, our screens with movement, our hearts with convenience. We run from stillness because it knows too much. It remembers the moment you stopped asking, the moment you settled, the moment you gave away your edge in exchange for approval. But now, the stillness is back, and it's not asking for your attention, it's demanding your surrender. Inside you, there is a war. One side built a life. The other is ready to burn it down. One tells you to be grateful. The other whispers that your gratitude is a form of self-abandonment. One urges you to stay the course. The other begs you to turn around before it's too late. You feel this split not as a thought, but as a tension in your chest, in the heaviness of waking up, in the numbness you call busy, in the moments when your victories feel like losses wearing nice suits. This isn't burnout. This is your soul refusing to be exiled any longer. Nietzsche didn't offer peace. He offered confrontation, not with others, but with the part of yourself that you buried in order to be accepted. And now that part is clawing its way back. It doesn't want your comfort. It wants your chaos. It wants to shake the pillars of your perfectly structured life and ask, why are you still pretending? This is enough? Why do you hide your hunger behind routines? Why do you silence your rage with small talk? Why do you decorate your cage instead of breaking it? The answers won't come from books, courses, or mentors. They will come in the moments you stop running, when you finally let the discomfort swell without numbing it, when you let the ache bloom into questions too big for language. This is not a breakdown. This is the opening of your real story. The one money was never meant to write. There is a quiet kind of violence in realizing that everything you've built may have been born from fear. Not the fear of failure, but the fear of being yourself without translation, without disguise, without apology. You became what was rewarded. You became what was admired. But in that becoming, something sacred was lost. something Nietzsche would call your will to power, not over others, but over your own destiny. Now, standing inside the golden shell of success, you begin to hear it, a crack, faint at first, then louder, not outside, inside. Something is breaking, and for the first time, you don't rush to fix it, because maybe that fracture is where your truth begins to seep through. There was a time when you felt alive simply by dreaming, when hunger meant hope, not humiliation, when your eyes still searched the sky instead of the screen. That self is not gone, just buried, trapped beneath the rituals of adulthood, beneath polished routines and rehearsed smiles. You buried them under shoulds and somedays. But now the dirt is shifting. Something ancient stirs, a longing older than language. And it doesn't want your plan. It wants your pulse. It wants to remind you of who you were before the world seduced you into becoming smaller in exchange for security. Nietzsche never asked you to be safe. He asked you to be sovereign, not immune to suffering, but unafraid of it. You were told that success is the opposite of struggle. But Nietzsche inverted that lie. He saw struggle as the birthplace of depth, the forge of clarity, the evidence of a life truly lived. And perhaps that's why the pain you feel now is not a signal of failure, but a sign that something inside you refuses to die quietly. That pain is the last honest thing you still possess. Don't medicate it. Don't negotiate with it. Listen to it. Let it ruin your silence. Let it ruin your image. Let it ruin your excuses, because it might be the only thing left that is still real. In a world addicted to appearances, your wounds may be your only doorway back to what matters. So let the emptiness speak. Let the ache echo. Let the dissatisfaction rise until it cannot be ignored. Because underneath it, if you go deep enough, you'll find something terrifying and liberating. You were never chasing money. You were trying to remember your power, not the kind they taught you in school, not the kind they sell in ads, but the wild, untamed power of a human being who remembers that they are not here to serve systems, but to shatter them. And if you follow that memory, if you stay with the ache instead of running, you may find that what you thought was emptiness was just space. Space for something truer, something freer, something you are no longer the same, and yet nothing outside of you has changed. The chair beneath you is still the same, the walls, the air, the screen. But within, a tremor. Subtle, unspoken, unmistakable. A veil has shifted. Something you've been avoiding has now been seen, and it cannot be unseen. Not entirely, not without consequence. The illusions once woven so tightly around your identity have loosened, just enough for light to leak through. And in that light, not comfort, but recognition. A memory not of the past, but of who you were before you began editing yourself for approval, before money became your language, before success became your disguise. This was never a video. It was a mirror. And what you saw, or refused to see, is now yours to carry. You came here thinking this might be about wealth, about economics, about philosophy. But what you found was a wound, ancient, intimate, and beautifully necessary, not because it hurts, but because it speaks of the part of you that still dreams without permission, that still aches, for meaning that isn't monetized, that still knows how to rebel in silence, to love in secret, to burn without spectacle. And that voice, small as it may be, just reclaimed its place in the center of your being. This is not a call to abandon what you have built. It is a call to remember who built it, and whether that self is still alive inside the frame you've been taught to present. Perhaps now you understand. The emptiness you feared was never your enemy. It was the doorway. The ache was not a flaw. It was a compass. The dissatisfaction, not failure, but invitation. Nietzsche never asked you to destroy your life. He asked you to destroy your illusions. And in their place, plant something that can survive the silence. That can look at wealth and say, "You are not my God, you are my tool." That can look at emptiness and say, "You are not my death, you are my chance." That can look at the mirror and not flinch, because now you know. The most valuable thing you will ever own is not your income, your title, or your following. It is the courage to face your own reflection and not look away. So let this moment echo. Let it stain the corners of your thoughts when the world grows loud again. Let it visit you in the spaces between meetings, in the silence after applause, in the weightless seconds before sleep. And when it does, don't run. Stay. Listen. Respond. And if this voice spoke to something true inside you, then join us. Not as a follower, not as an algorithm, but as someone ready to remember. Like, comment, share. Not because you should, but because you must. Because somewhere, someone else is still decorating their cage, still confusing silence with peace. And your echo might be the spark they never knew they were waiting for. And if no one has ever told you this before, let it be said now. You are not empty. You are simply standing at the edge of everything that no longer fits.